Thank you. I'm pleased to introduce the President of the City Council of Stockholm, Eva-Louise Erlandsson Slorach, to make the opening remarks. Thank you.
Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, Chairman Mr. Magnusson, Director General Mr. Weber, honorable speakers, honorable guests. It's a great pleasure, an honor for me to welcome you all to Peace Talks here in the City Hall today. The Peace Talks are a great initiative to showcase inspirational stories of people making a contribution to peace. City Hall serves many purposes and we host many important events like this. Last year, I had the honor to introduce the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, here in the Blue Hall. He gave a very interesting speech in memory of one of his predecessors, Dag Hammarskjöld. When I saw the program for today's events, I was very impressed by the list of distinguished speakers. You are all most welcome, and I look forward to your presentations. The theme of Stockholm Peace Talks today is Better Together. The topic of inclusion and respect for diversity is an important one, affecting all of us, especially in these troubled times. Therefore, the City of Stockholm is pleased to be working together with you on this important event to support inclusion around the world and here in Sweden. So, once again, welcome, and I'm sure that will be a very interesting and fruitful evening for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, Your Royal Highnesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2017 Stockholm Peace Talks. Also, a warm welcome to our online viewers from all around the world and those who are following us in social media using the hashtag Stockholm Peace Talks. My name is Thomas Emanuel, and I'm working with Interpeace here in Sweden. And together with Alexandra Pascalidou, we will bring you a nice evening and co-host it together.
And I'm really honored and so happy to be here. In fact, I couldn't even dream about standing here in front of Her Royal Highness, Crown Princess Victoria, and all these eminent guests. I came to Sweden from Greece at the age of 6, and I grew up only 15 minutes from here in a suburb that seems like another world, the poorest suburb of Sweden. It's called Rinkeby. And all of my neighbors and schoolmates were migrants and refugees. And we ended up here because of wars, dictatorships, persecution, and poverty. And as many other people here tonight, I've been suffering from the pain of exclusion. And I used it as a force to fight for human dignity, for inclusion, and diversity. And I'm so happy that you will meet so many inspirational personalities tonight and peacemakers here. And it's also a privilege to be in this great landmark of Sweden, in Stadshuset. And you might know that the Stockholm Peace Talks is an initiative to showcase inspirational stories from different people, different personalities with different backgrounds. The Peace Talks started in Geneva through the Geneva Peace Talks back in 2013, co-founded by the United Nations at Geneva, the Geneva Peace Building Platform, and Interpeace, with the support of the Swiss government. Now the Peace Talks have traveled to Nairobi, Ottawa, London, and now back to Stockholm again.
Yes, and this year's Stockholm Peace Talks is organized by Interpeace in collaboration with the city of Stockholm. The event is also made possible with the generous support of the Swedish Postcode Lottery Foundation, Ben & Jerry's, the Embassy of Switzerland in Sweden, Nespresso, and with the support of Geneva Peace Building Platform.
That's it. And the theme of our Stockholm Peace Talks is Better Together. The topic of inclusion and respect for diversity is affecting all of us, especially in these turbulent times with growing gaps, polarization, and extremism and radicalization on rise around the world. Tonight, you will, as I told you, meet outstanding personalities with different backgrounds and experiences. They are going to share their stories and highlight the importance on how each one of us can play an important role in creating a more inclusive society and thereby a peaceful world.
All right, so each speaker will give an 8-minute peace talks, and we hope you are inspired by today's speakers and encourage you to reflect on what you can do to promote inclusion. A few practical issues before beginning. There will be an opportunity to interact directly with the speakers during the reception, so there will be no questions or comments during the event. It's strict. The talks you are about to hear do not necessarily reflect the views of the organizers and the sponsors. This is an event both in Swedish and in English, and we have simultaneous translation from Swedish to English. Kindly place your mobile phones on silent, but we encourage you to use social media. Again, the hashtag is Stockholm Peace Talks.
A long hashtag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And please, no flash photographies.
So now it's time for us to start. And our first speaker tonight is Anton Abele. He's a debater and a politician who became the youngest ever member of parliament at the age of 18 years old only. Anton founded the Stop Street Violence non-profit organization back in 2007, which focuses on preventing youth violence, and we will hear more about that tonight. Welcome, Anton. The floor is yours.
Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be with you here today. I was thrilled to be asked to join this year's Peace Talks, and even more so to hear about the theme of the conference, Better Together. This theme raises incredibly important questions, questions that lie very close to my heart and that have helped shape my life and career for the past 10 years. 10 years ago, I started a movement against violence after a Swedish teenager was beaten to death in Stockholm. This young person was only one of all those who every year die as a result of gang-related crime and assaults. Nevertheless, this tragic event had an enormous impact on me personally, but also Sweden as a nation. For me, this event was a turning point. Being 15 years old at the time, I was deeply affected by this tragedy. I felt that the threat of violence had come to affect my everyday life and the lives of those around me. My friends and I no longer felt safe walking the streets of our own city. And we felt that Sweden had changed, and we were worried about the development. And a lot of people around Sweden seemed to feel the same thing. We were tired of hearing the news reports about the violence among youth. It had to come to an end. I decided to act, and in an attempt to gather my friends to discuss what we had all experienced, I created a group on Facebook called Save Us from the Street Violence. The number of members in the group grew tremendously fast. And the group quickly went from being a forum for a couple of my friends to having over 100,000 members. And remember, this was 10 years ago when Facebook had about 500,000 users in Sweden. Together, we'd started a movement, and I was completely overwhelmed by the interest and support people showed by joining the group I had created. At this point, I also knew that we had to channel this interest and support into something concrete and actionable. We had to turn likes and shares into real action. And the first step about that was to arrange a manifestation in Stockholm. 1 week after the group reached 100,000 members, over 10,000 people from all over Sweden gathered in a manifestation with one thing in common. We all wanted to put an end to violence. And by gathering this many people around our cause, we sent a clear message to politicians, to parents, to youth, to society. With the support of people, organizations, and companies all over Sweden, and a lot of attention from the media, what had started as a movement on Facebook quickly turned into an organization with hundreds of volunteers. During the coming years, hundreds of debates and manifestations against violence were held and organized all over Sweden. We mobilized parents to walk the streets of their neighborhoods at night. We arranged school conferences and reached out to local politicians. We managed to create real change, and we started a nationwide movement against violence. So, how was all of this possible? Well, embracing the opportunities of new information technologies and social media is probably one answer to that question. In my case, I used technology to gather people on the internet. However, as inspiring as that was, it was still only the first step in creating real change. We managed to channel people's willingness to take a stand into real action, which led to people going out in the streets and actually taking a stand and engaging themselves against violence. We took the debate from social media to the dinner tables of Swedish families. And yet again, we transformed likes into true activism. And this brings us to the question that I want to leave you with today. Today, it's quite easy to take a stand by liking, sharing, retweeting, you name it. And this is all great, but has it become too easy to take a stand and feel a part of a change? There are so many examples of the true power in platforms such as Facebook and Twitter. In the world of today, many argue that activism has become a regular part of our daily lives. However, from my point of view, I'm not so sure that I agree about that. In my opinion, we've seen a tremendous growth in slacktivism during the past years. Yes, slacktivism. A word combined by the two words slacker, meaning lazy, and activism. The social media revolution has made it possible for people to show their care for a cause, voice their opinion, and feel like they're making a difference. But in all honesty, how much change can really come from a like? People actually interact with each other more than ever today. But with the shift from analog to digital, I also see a distressing development. It seems that we're moving towards a society in which people care more about each other on social media, but at the same time, less about each other in real life. And a very upsetting example of that is that witnesses to violence now more than ever use their phones to film the assault instead of actually trying to stop it. And yes, it will always be hard to force people to take action, especially when their own lives might be at stake when doing so. However, that one life may depend on someone to take action. I think my story is an example of a very significant difference between likes on social media and real action, which is probably the reason why I was invited here today to tell that. If there's one message I would like to leave you with today, it is that moral courage, activism, and engagement in real life outside of social media is actually becoming less and less common. And it is our job to turn that around and turn this development around to something better again. We have to reignite true engagement and activism again. No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And all of us in this room are responsible for reminding ourselves, but also the next generation, of the importance of standing up for your beliefs through real engagement. I'm convinced that we can make a change for the better if we work in line with the theme of this conference, better together. And just as all these people who engaged themselves against violence 10 years ago managed to start a movement, I'm also sure that we can do the same again. Because as I said before, only action can truly change the world. Thank you all.
Thank you, Adam. Anton, sorry. I thought I was tall. This guy is almost to the roof. All right, that was very interesting, and I can agree with him. It's a lot of people that like to share their opinions on internet, on Facebook, but it's quite different to take an action, an active call. Our next speaker, I will switch to Swedish. Vår nästa talare heter Selma Tengeborg. Selma arbetar som polis i Skåne, i södra Sverige. Selma kom in på Stockholms polisakademi vid 24-årsåldern och träffar många ungdomar i sitt arbete. Hon kommer nu att berätta om sin personliga erfarenheter som polis och om sitt brottsförebyggande arbete. Välkommen Selma.
Ers Majestät, kompisar och åhörare. Jag får ofta frågan, har du velat bli polis när du var liten och varför ville du bli polis? Den första frågan är lätt att svara ja på. Kort och rakt svar, ja. Men den andra är svårare att svara på, varför ville du bli polis? De gamla nyckelorden för polisen, hjälpa, skydda och ställa till rätta, är en bra grund till varför jag ville bli polis. När jag var cirka 5 år gammal sökte min mamma hjälp hos polisen. Jag tror inte alls att problemet hade med polisen att göra, men det var denna statliga myndighet som min mamma kände förtroende och tillit till. Trots att jag satt ensam kvar i receptionen så var det här min grundbild av polisen sattes. Jag fick mitt första och kanske egentligen riktiga möte med polisen under min uppväxt. Det här mötet gjorde intryck och min grundbild var satt. Jag ville också göra så att människor skulle känna sig trygga och jag ville hjälpa dem som hade svårt av olika anledningar. Jag ville skapa rättvisa och att de som behandlar andra illa skulle få veta att de gjorde fel. När jag rensade i källaren för ett tag sedan hittade jag en gammal bok, typ Mina vänner-bok. Under rubriken drömyrke stod det polis. Jag tror jag var 10 år gammal när jag skrev det. När jag var 24 år kom jag in på Polishögskolan här i Stockholm. Jag var jätteglad och kände att äntligen ska jag få jobba med mitt drömyrke. Efter genomförd utbildning sökte jag min aspiranttjänst i Malmö. Och efter fullgjord aspirant fick jag min fasta placering på Rosengård i Malmö. Jag ska inte sticka under stolen med att jag sökte mig till Rosengård för att stadsdelen hade ett rykte om sig. Ryktet för mig bestod av en mångkulturell stadsdel med hög arbetslöshet och kriminalitet. Rosengård byggdes som en del i det så kallade miljonprogrammet på 60- och 70-talet. Jag tyckte att jobbet som polis på Rosengård kunde vara lite häftigt och utmanande. Jag ville jobba med ungdomar och jag ville förändra dem. Jag jobbade som utryckningspolis och efter några år valde jag att vara med när vi startade en grupp som kallades för ungdoms- och områdesgruppen. Vårt syfte var att jobba med ungdomar. Vi ville arbeta förebyggande innan det var för sent. Min personliga åsikt är att om du blir straffad för till exempel narkotikabrott när du är 15 år har du antagligen testat någon drog innan du fyller 15. Det är inte heller helt orimligt att du är fast i ett missbruk och att du behöver finansiera det här missbruket. Finansieringen sköts inte allt för sällan av stölder och narkotikaförsäljning. Så vid 15 års ålder kan ungdomen redan ha satt sig i olika situationer som är svåra att ta sig ur. Jag menar därför att vi måste upptäcka ungdomar i tid. Det kan finnas varningstecken som någon rycker på axlarna åt, men som från den unges håll är ett rop på hjälp. Det är inte bara polisen som ska upptäcka de här varningstecknen, utan enligt mig ligger detta ansvar på alla vuxna i ungdomens närhet. Det är vi vuxna som tillsammans kan forma ungdomar och därigenom framtiden. I många sammanhang förväntas mig som polis att jag ska lösa alla möjliga problem. Ni skulle bli förvånade om ni hörde vad samtalen till polisen kan handla om. Det är lätt att tolka som negativt. Varför ska jag lösa alla möjliga konstiga problem? Som många andra vill jag också kunna lägga det på någon annan. Den där någon annan är alltid bra att ha. Vi har alla våra bra och dåliga dagar. När jag har en bra dag kan jag tänka att det är fantastiskt vilket förtroende människor har för mig som polis.
People have such an amazing confidence in me as a police officer. These people who ask us for help has, just like my mother did when I was little, that they have exhausted their first alternatives and they come to a point where they say, who can help me? That they then come to me as a police officer is like getting a medal. I've gotten a chance to be a problem solver. I have to admit that this is not always something positive for me. I wish that I thought so all the time, but sometimes I can get disappointed and upset with people. Why can't people just be nice to each other, help each other, and make sure that nobody has to take this last resort? But talking about medals, last summer, me and my colleagues, we did the interval performance at a theatre play that was arranged outdoors in the suburb of Rosengård. And the play was about courage and what was courageous. And we decided to arrange a courage track, and this was specifically for children. And they had to answer questions to do with police things. After they had completed their track, they got a courage medal. This track was done when there was an interval in the play, and I've never felt so liked and so popular in my job as I did then. The kids were fantastic. They weren't particularly interested in the questions, but they thought it was fun to do it together and that they could do it with the police. I felt that there was such a positive side to Rosengård. These were children who will grow up together and they will take over when we are no longer able. The children could come and go on our track during the interval in all these shows. Many of the children came many times and many had got as many as 9 medals. Being a police officer is not just about helping, protecting and putting right. There are so many ways as we as officers together with us can influence children, young people and the future. I hope that we will be able to do this together. The work as a police is not always the way I imagined it when I was 10-year-old. I was working on the first day when the border controls in Malmö were started. We were standing outside in the cold in the train station in Malmö, and my job was to tell the train driver that he should stop because we were doing a border control. And then I entered the train with my colleagues to check everybody's passports and ID documents. I felt uneasy. It felt like I was in a war and I was to judge who was welcome and who was not. Of course, that was not my job. But the feeling inside me was uneasy. In the middle of the night, there could be families there with young children. They didn't have a house. They didn't have warm clothes. They didn't know the language, didn't know where they were going. There are flip sides to all jobs. Me and my colleagues have seen some of the flip sides of being a police officer, but I'm extremely proud of being a police officer and the work that we do. Since October of last year, I work as a local officer in a municipality of Burlöv. This gives me a chance to work with crime prevention and also to make contacts within our organization and outside of it. I'm really happy with that. Sometimes people have told me that I'm too nice to be an officer. I don't think that you can be too nice to be a police officer. The words kind, considerate, humane and engaging describe my colleagues very well. With love and consideration, we can go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Selma, for your speech and your work. Our next speaker is Olof Skog, Swedish ambassador to the United Nations in New York. And he will speak on his experience of the past 3 months as representative of Sweden on the Security Council and how integrity and inclusive approaches can strengthen UN leadership in conflict prevention and resolution. Help me to welcome Mr. Skog. Hej! Välkommen.
Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness, dear colleagues, friends of peace, all of you. Yes, I represent my country proudly at the United Nations. It means that as an ambassador, I sit behind the Swedish nameplate around this famous horseshoe table in New York that makes up the Security Council. As you know, the Security Council is charged as the main world body to uphold international peace and security and to prevent wars and conflict. It has the mandate to allow military interventions or to impose very serious sanctions against, and that becomes binding, of all countries in the world. But I'm also a very normal, average guy from Skåne. I get stressed, I'm emotional, I get nervous, I have a short memory, I forget things, and I fail sometimes to understand the major connections between some of the world politics that takes place around me. And I wanted to reflect a little bit about the human nature, the importance of personal relations, also in world politics. We started our tenure in the Security Council on the 1st of January after a tough campaign. And starting that, it just so happened that we were also the president, we were the chairman of the Security Council the first month as we entered, the month of January. And as we prepared for that, I have two very strong impressions and images in my mind. One was of a conversation I had had with a Nigerian ambassador. Her name was Joy. She told me how she had grown up, and as a young girl, Russian warplanes had bombed her village. There was havoc and destruction all around her as she fled with her family. She was saved. She was more lucky than many others in her environment. And she said to me that she felt that there was some sort of a divine intervention here that saved her. And then that continued to intervene and to made her one day become her country's representative in the UN and in the Security Council. And she felt that there was somehow a destiny much higher than just representing your own country to sit around that table, that you had to take charge and make sure, in her words, to ensure that every day around that Security Council, in that Security Council, you have to make sure that the girls who grow up, in her case, Nigeria today, shouldn't have to suffer what she had suffered. The other image I had is the complete reversal, the complete opposite. I had, as an observer, before we entered the Security Council, been sitting around observing the Council as it debated Syria. The grandstanding of some of the permanent members, the personal insults among ambassadors thrown at each other around this table. Of course, I'm sure, making someone back in Washington or London or Moscow happy about how they performed, how they presented their nation's instructions in that particular case, but also, of course, ensuring that the Security Council was paralyzed. And I'm sure to the great disillusionment of the people, in this case of Syria. And many of those who observed this, greatly disillusioned about the Security Council. So those two images were very much on my mind as we prepared for taking up our seat. And we felt that if this is the working climate in this council, where is all this about taking a bigger responsibility, making sure that we protect the dignity of mankind and preventing the world from another the scourge of war? Now, the way this works is that the first day, as you enter as chairman of the Security Council, you invite all your 14 colleagues, the 14 ambassadors, to a breakfast meeting, very informally, to set out the work for the month to come. And as I did that, I very much recalled the story of Joy and what I had seen, how things really worked. And I just tried to recall and remind my colleagues around this table that we do have a bigger responsibility than just making sure that we protect our national interests, that we have to protect the credibility of this organization, that we have to try to make a difference on the ground, and that we have to listen to each other respectfully and not throw insults at each other, and that actually what we do is much more important to the people in Juba, Aleppo, or Kinshasa than to the people of London, Stockholm, or Washington or Moscow. And that we need to listen to the voices, the real voices out there in the world. So, as we took on the first month, and you know, I'm sure I'm not attentive and intelligent enough to pay attention to all the back talk that is going about us, and maybe I'm naive, but I do have a sense that we were actually able to make a little bit of a difference that first month, because of this plea to everyone to pay attention to the respectfulness of our deliberations. And I have a sense that also the bigger countries realize that sometimes a country like Sweden can play a little bit of a bridge. And we felt very often that when we wanted the Security Council to come out with results, that there should be something, we shouldn't just discuss things, we should also be able to communicate some sort of unity afterwards. When we put forward such proposals from the chair, the fact that it came from Sweden, it helped. Had it been from the United Kingdom or from Russia, I'm sure that the other one would have blocked it. And I think they have gradually understood that actually there is a space also for the smaller countries on that Security Council. And we also made a great point about bringing in the voices from the outside, the kind of people that Joy was talking about. So we've had a woman talking to us from Somalia about the need for much better women participation in the politics of her country, which, by the way, is true for all countries. We've had a young woman talking to us via video link from the northeastern parts of Nigeria about the terrible things that Boko Haram is doing and the suffering of all the people in that part of the world. So I think that we've had shown that there is the possibility of activists, of passion also in that body. And I think it's very important too that countries like Sweden stand up for civil society, because we see that the role of civil society is very much shrinking in parts of the world. And that is not just a question of solidarity with civil society, with youth or women. It's also based on empirical fact that we know that countries that are not treating their women or their youth or plurality the way they should is already an indicator of troubles to come ahead. Now, are we happy with where we are? Well, I think there's always a risk in my trade, and maybe in some of yours, that you are happy just because you've survived a meeting, you presented your intervention in a good way, you sort of survived that day's various challenges. But we cannot rest until we see that what we do, what the Security Council does, actually makes a difference on the ground, that it improves the lives of people. And there, I just wanted to end by sharing this dream that maybe one day, 10 years from now, I hope I'll have some grandchildren. And I can see this picture, this image again, how one of my grandchildren approaches me and says, "Is it true that the year 2017, children were suffering, were starving, running away from wars, all caused by grown-ups?" And that I could say, yes, that happened in 2017, but it doesn't happen anymore, and it will never happen again. Thank you very much.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Olof. Thank you. I really hope you can say that, and we can say that to our grandchildren. And I also say we cannot rest until it's done. For the next section, I will be talking to one of my heroes, and you know her. She is a real role model. She is an author, a psychologist who has been dedicated her life to fight against xenophobia, racism. She's a survivor of the Holocaust, and tonight she will speak about her experience during the Holocaust and what can be done to build a better future for all of us. Please welcome Hedi Frid. Not.
So I'm 92 now. Wow, you're 92. That is fantastic. I'm a bit tired myself. You are a hero, and I think that there are many, many people here who respect you for your patience, your perseverance, and your untiring struggle. You're one of the few remaining survivors. And I want to know, we have only a very short while together here, but I would like to ask you what memory, a sequence, something that you would like to share with us here this evening. I carry many memories. The older I get, the more you remember your childhood. And what I remember is a dream. I don't know if it was my dream or if it is a dream that I inherited from generations of Jews who were always on the move. I see people carrying their parcels in a long line. And this happened to me. And it had never occurred to me that I would be one of those that I'd seen in my dreams. But there were troubled times. People were unhappy. And you know, when there is people are dissatisfied, you need a scapegoat. That time it was us. Another time it might be others. Today it is Muslims and other groups. And you and your sister, you lost your parents. And I think of the Holocaust and the gas chambers. And the people who worked there, they were just ordinary people. These were just ordinary mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers who nevertheless enforced these atrocities. How was it possible? They had no choice. Sorry. They had no choice. Because you stick to life with the last strength you have. And this is what meant that we were able to cope with all the little stages that led to the Holocaust. Because as long as you don't have a gun against your head, you want to live. And as we know, even then, when you knew that death would follow, those people who were standing by the graves that they had dug themselves on the edge, fear make people passive. They aren't able to put up a struggle, and they accept it. In 1946, you came with your sister to Sweden. In 1945, after the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, Sweden was generous, and they invited us for a 6-month convalescence, and with the hope that after 6 months we would return to our countries of origin. But none of us wanted to do that because there was nothing left there to go back to. So yet again, Sweden was generous. They let us stay. We got an alien's passport. We started working. And then with time, we became Swedes, we thought. And what do you mean? Well, they called us so many things, even though we were the same. First of all, we were refugees, and we didn't quite understand because we were not fleeing. We were thrown out. But then our status was changed to foreigners. And then before long, we became immigrants. And then we were asking ourselves, when will we become Swedes? Well, when you become citizens. In those days, it took 7 years. So at that time, I was married, I had children, and we were very happy to become citizens. But the way it is in Sweden now, even our children might get asked, where do you come from? And when he says, Vällingby, a suburb of Stockholm, yes, but originally. And This is a form of exclusion, and this is what we're talking about here today. But sometimes I just comfort myself by saying that you give somebody many names if you like them. You and the Crown Prince Victoria, you have traveled to Auschwitz together and have visited it. What did you want the Crown Princess to hear? What did you tell her? Well, I got a chance to tell my entire story, which is too long to tell you here. But I wanted to stress was that if you have gone through very difficult things, you can never get rid of them. You can learn to live with them. And if you've done that, you don't have to think about the past. You then want future generations not to have to go through the same trials as yourself. And you have lectured around the country in other countries. You have written books. You have published a book that I recommend everybody to read. But now we live in extremely turbulent times with a lot of polarization and a very kind of harsh environment. There are those who compare the times we live in with what happened in the 1930s before the Holocaust. Other people think that is a vulgar comparison, that you can't make comparisons like that. But what do you think? Are there things that remind us of those times? There are many things that remind us. This thing that the language has changed so quickly, that yet again there is a charismatic leader who gets a lot of publicity. I don't understand that people don't understand that when people are dissatisfied, that they're looking for something new. And this is what they did. And that we can't see that all these promises were just promises. Hitler first believed that he could get into power by violence. But after the Nuremberg putsch in the beer hall in Nuremberg, he discovered that he had to use other means. And it's the same thing that is happening here. I can't speak about world politics, but when I think about what is happening in America, maybe you can't compare it that way because he is not as intelligent as Hitler was. And we might not even have to travel as far as to the United States, because in Europe too we have populist movements, and we can see a gradual normalization and a greater acceptance of racism. And we see Nazi and fascist proponents in many, many countries, and we're running out of time. There's so many things we would like to talk to you about. If you could give us advice, there are many people here who are struggling on a daily basis for peace, for inclusion, for diversity. Could you give us some advice? What do we have to remember? What do you think we should do? What is very important is to fight against prejudice, because the prejudices are the root of a lot of the evil in this world. We all have prejudices without us knowing, because we inherit them. And prejudices, we have to try to stop our own prejudices in ourselves to begin with, and not to be afraid to or to respond to prejudicial comments, we have to ask that person, what do you base your claims on? And to try. Usually they say, I mean, such and such a person said this, but to try to say something else, and hope that you plant a seed in that person. And I think that empathy, I believe that children are born with empathy, but we lose it along the way. And empathy is something that we can learn too. Is it like a muscle that you train? Yes, there are studies actually. And there is a book that was published recently about empathy training. I can't remember the name of the author now, but that's a very interesting book. I can recommend that because the woman who wrote it, she talks about this. But building bridges, places where people can meet, and many people here work with this. This is a way of getting more empathy for other people, because what we can see today is that there's more segregation and that the inequalities, they grow. And this is the problem, that people live in isolated bubbles, and there are many people here in power. What would you like to say to them? What advice would you give them? That they remember to don't treat people differently. You don't have to love everybody, but you can live in peace with each other. You should remember that hatred and mistreatment just produces more hatred and mistreatment. And who wants to live in a world filled with hatred? It would be nicer to live in peace with each other and not have to worry about what will I eat tomorrow. There are many, many people, not just in Sweden, but in other countries, who are afraid, who have a fear and a worry, but who cannot practice their freedom of speech because they are afraid of hatred and threats, etc. But I was thinking of you. You have experienced the worst thing possible, inferno. What do you fear today? Today, nothing. I'm old enough not to be afraid. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, it's fantastic. And I advise you, all of you, do not be afraid, because fear paralyzes and you cannot do anything then. Always look your enemy in the eye. And what you fear, you have to meet and challenge. And I've actually learned this in all these years. So if you could ask for something, Olof Skog, the ambassador, he was saying that he hoped that his grandchildren would say, was it really true that in 2017 there were children who starved? What do you wish? Well, I wish the same as he does. Thank you so much for being here, that you keep fighting, and because you're such a source of inspiration, and because you give everybody the strength. Many, many thanks. Hedi Frid. Was it okay?
Wow, Thank you. And thank you, Heidi. That was very interesting to listen to. Okay, we now have a musical performance by Elin Rombo, a very good opera soprano. Elin has performed in Frankfurt Opera, the Salzburg Festival, and at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And in November 2013, she was named court singer, and 2016 she was awarded the medal Litteris et Artibus by the Swedish king. Tonight she will be performing two songs for us. Stjärnöga, which means a star eye, by Wilhelm Stenhammar, and Sci il bel sogno från operan La Rondine by Puccini. All right, please welcome Elin.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Your Majesty. I would nevertheless like to make a little more introduction to the two pieces we are going to perform. The first one by Wilhelm Stenhammar gives us a warm and light reflection over life as its path is coming to an end. And the second piece is an aria from the opera La Rondine by Puccini. And as all Puccini operas, it's about love, happy or sad, crazy and wonderful.
Färdiga du som jag mött långt i försvunna tider. Nu är det kvälldags och trött, min ungdom till vila skrider. Irrbloss som världen har tänt slocknar så lätt i världen. Förnuga mycket har hänt sedan ni skildes på färden. Vilsammar vägen som går fram genom mörka länder. Stjärnöga, stjärnöga når jag aldrig mer i dina händer. Tag mina händer och led mig in i ditt ljusa rike. Stjärnöga, giv mig din frid och låt mig vara din like. dove mai finì? Ahimè, un giorno uno studente invocò la bacio, e fu quel bacio rivelazione, fu la passione.
Thank you so much for that performance. It was amazing, amazing. Thank you. Okay, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, Her Royal Highness. Now it's time to switch to Swedish again. Nu ska vi få lyssna på Siavosh Derakti som startade en organisation som heter Unga mot antisemitism och främlingsfientlighet i Malmö. Men den stannade inte i Malmö, den fick vingar över världen. Och ja, han har till och med träffat USAs president. Ja, inte Trump då, utan den förra, Barack Obama. Vi får väl se om den nuvarande presidenten också bjuder in Siavosh på ett möte för att diskutera just främlingsfientligheten. Siavosh, det är en enorm glädje att få ha dig här på scenen och få höra din personliga historia. Välkommen hit!
Welcome here. Right, ladies and gentlemen, first I want to thank you, for Alexandra Pascalidou, for a fantastic introduction for my beautiful name, if you say so. But you're just going to know that it was Obama met me, not me and Obama. When I got the question what language I was going to speak in, if we're going to take it in Swedish, English, the answer was really simply, it's going to be in Skåne dialect of Swedish. I'm going to start off by saying and sending a question to you. How many of you got a dream? Well, how many of you reached that dream? Now you only see a singular person. My parents, they had dreams. My father and my mother, they came as political refugees from a dictatorship, from oppression, from war. 1987, my family decided to got this beautiful Sweden. My father had a dream. He was a trained doctor. My mother had a dream. She was a trained economist. Do you think my father became a doctor in Sweden? No. Do you think my mother became an economist in Sweden? Yes, because I employed her. So, and this is something that has affected me when I grew up. As you hear from my dialect, I'm from a city called Malmö, which sometimes we're boasting and we've got the best falafel and we've got Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but we also got our problems that maybe not everyone wants to raise to the surface. And 7 years ago, I got to read lots of news that the Jewish minority in Malmö was very hated, threatened, harassed, and simply were not safe. And I was thinking of my family, my parents who decided to run to Sweden, that we shouldn't be harassed or oppressed. But I was lucky. But I grew up with two fantastic best friends. One was a Roma, the other Jewish, and the third musketeer was the Muslim. That's me. We had something in common. We felt outside society. We didn't fit in. Unfortunately, I had a broken childhood. I almost flunked all subjects in the school. When you're 15 years old, you don't know where to go in life, and you leave the school, almost all subjects flunked. The whole life is just in chaos. I had to do 30 applications to upper secondary for one school to accept me. Sometimes I had to fight when I grew up for a friend, and I didn't understand often, why do I fight for this person? But still, one day he stopped and asked me, you, why do we fight this much? What are you doing? Are you checking out someone's girl or sister? What are you doing? He looks at me and says, you didn't understand. We fight for one reason. It's because I am Jewish. First time I understood how it was to be a Jew in Malmö, and that was then. But unfortunately today, it hasn't become any better. On the contrary, worse. Even if some in the city hall in Malmö cannot confess to it having become worse, we in the field work with these problems. I decided to do something because I was tired of being a victim. I was tired of being excluded. I was tired of feeling sorry for myself because it was always someone else's fault. You who are decision makers, you get to hear this, always the politician's fault or someone else's fault all the time. But here it was so important that I, as an individual, understand that it's my responsibility to be part of shaping Sweden, because we love to talk about other countries. Primarily we Swedes, we often say, well, the American dream, within brackets. Well, that Trump has shown it's possible to become United States president, hasn't he? And how is it possible that we here together in this room have to be part of building our city and our country so that Sweden, we should make sure, should be the land of possibility? When I decided 7 years ago to start an organization called today Young Against Anti-Semitism and Xenophobia, I didn't know exactly how to do it. I didn't know that I one day would stand here and talk to you. The first time I started was 2011 when I came to the government office at Rosenbad, when I was part of a fantastic committee, which was a Raoul Wallenberg committee. And get to these fantastic rooms and halls, that meant a lot to me. That even when we started working with youth in the field, we started working with their identity, we strengthened their self-confidence, and we want to build bridges between various minorities, where we're going to fight hatred with love. For every individual in here can make a difference, and we should not be fearing extremism or radicalization or terrorists. The only ones we should be fearful of is the good people's silence. That is to be feared. And naturally, our work was acknowledged. I felt like a citizen of Malmö had a responsibility not to accept that Jewish community in Malmö one day maybe have to close, and then I'm going to be ashamed, not as a citizen of Malmö, not as a Swede, but as a human, that we didn't do enough. But the work all the way to White House got resonance, luckily. And one day I got the honor to meet the then President of the United States, Obama, when I met him. I was like thinking, wow, he's so tall. I'm going to smell him, and it smelled very nice as well. And we were standing there talking. We took a fantastic picture together, and that picture when I get home to my parents. And I was a bit nervous when I met the president. I started thinking, wow, how can you speak to a president? How do you address him? Then if I squeeze his hand too hard, or maybe if I like hug him too hard, and then it's all these snipers are going to be, well, panic. And then I became a little bit stressed. But the best mark was not that I was awarded the best prize or it was the Raoul Wallenberg Prize, but it was not just the biggest moment, and I got to see the then President of the United States. Would you know what the best moment was? After 22 years, for the first time, feel included in this country, because I got to represent Sweden, and I got to represent my family, and even represent my city, Malmö. And when I get home to my family, I see my father with a whole big family, extended family. He comes up to me, looked me in the eye, squeezed my hand and said, "My son, we're so proud of you." And the best thing of all, I was proud of myself as well. Damn it. Unfortunately, if everything can be glim and glam sometimes, it's humans that it boils down to. Sometimes I'm wondering, do we really live in a democratic society? Can we really express the way we want sometimes? But today, I get a lot of death threats. Today, I can't tell to everyone around what kind of security I have. But if there are people in my hometown that want to work against me, not with me, and want to stop me. But do you know what? I've only got one message for them. Make homos, not war. So thank you very much for having me here. It's a great honor.
Thank you. Excellent. Next up, we have Staffan de Mistura, UN Special Envoy for Syria and elected Swede of the year 2016. He has spent over 42 years in humanitarian work, serving numerous conflict zones, directing complex relief operations, food distribution, and vaccination campaign. He will speak to us on his experience in negotiations and why, for him, inclusion is important. Please welcome Staffan on stage.
Kronprinsessa, tack.
Crown Princess, thank you.
I will not talk to you about Syria, although I am involved in it, just because I'm very much involved in Syria. But I will give you an experience, share with you an experience which did mark myself. And if you will see the message, it does have an impact on what we are doing also in Syria. So fly with me back. 1999, in the Balkans. At that time, Balkans was Syria, was Afghanistan, was Iraq. And we had a terrible war, civil wars taking place. Daytona had taken place, and the next step in the mosaicus of the tragedy was Kosovo. At that time, Milosevic had decided Kosovo should not become independent. But the Albanian majority wanted independence. So the result was a terrible forced migrations. Thousands and thousands of people were actually forced away. They were mostly women, children, elder people. The young men were kept because they were afraid once out they could become guerrilla or fighters. But not only forced away, they were actually taking away everything. their own identity. No wedding paper, no identity, no documents, no house, no buildings of any paper saying you belong to a village or you belong to any community. Just the identity away. And crowds of them were coming. Crowds were coming to Albania, to a place called Kukës, or to Macedonia. 300,000 came to Albania. 1 million of them were destabilized, either becoming IDPs, internal displaced, or refugees. The world was shocked. They didn't know how to handle it. It was too much at the same time. And that was the purpose, to pressure the whole international community. So camps of refugees were established all around this place, Kukës. So I was sent there by the Secretary General to help UNHCR, which was literally overwhelmed by this. And we had prepared a special meeting point, waiting for the crowds. There were waves of them coming on foot, walking slowly, and had almost like a chain of reception. And the chain was, first of all, hot milk with honey, hot tea, and then a medical checkup, and then a blanket, and then immediately afterwards to a refugee camp. And there were thousands, almost 10,000 per day. But there was a new surprise. Suddenly I discovered that, in fact, up there in the hill, just along the road, we had a road of 750 meters that was no man's land between the border and us. And we were waiting with our chain of support. But up there were snipers, 2 or 3 of them. I was watching them, and I could see they were aiming in front of the crowd which was coming. And the message was, you can't be safe. You will have terror until the last moment. And we will scare you, and we will make you feel that you didn't make it. So I decided to change the approach. I was wearing always the same dress, the same shirt, the blue UN beret. The snipers were recognizing me. I was a UN official. Shooting at me would have made a big news. So I decided every time that we saw a new arrival, I would walk across towards the no man's land, and then open my arms and wait. They would see there was someone strange in the middle of the road was actually welcoming them, and the others were waiting. And when the first, usually a woman or a man, old, not young, because the young were kept, they would be a little bit suspicious, but the snipers were not shooting, and then I would hug them, and hug them for almost a minute, and try to tell them in German, in English, or in Albanian at the time, welcome, you almost made it, come with me, come, walk, you almost did it. Well, we did it for almost a week. I was exhausted, and my colleagues too. I had embraced hundreds of people by that time. And it was exhausting because it was also emotionally feeling how cruel all this was. And one evening, it was sunset almost, my colleague tells me, Staffan, titta, look. And suddenly I take my binocular and I see in the middle of the road, walking very slowly, an elder gentleman and a woman, his wife, only 2. He was dressed in his best dress, black, like farmers have when they go to the mosque or to the church, and he had a stock stick, and he had very thick glasses, and walking slowly with a bag pulling, and his wife was close to him, dressed in the national dress, which is again the one she had, the best she could carry with. And I saw them, and I saw on the sun, it was sunset, the blinking of the guns. They were probably starting to aim. So this time I rushed towards them and actually stopped again and waited. He looked at me and couldn't see and understand what it was. And when he finally came close, I hugged him strongly. And he cried. And he cried and said in German, because he had worked in Germany, I am so ashamed. I'm so ashamed I'm just an old man. An old man which has no future. My sons are in the back. I could do nothing. They didn't even want to keep me. And here I am, and crying. I took him by hand. I brought him with his wife. He had a problem on his leg, and we then gave him the milk, and then medical care, a blanket, and he went to the refugee camp. Few weeks passed by, and finally, like often too late, the international community reacted. It was too much. It was too outrageous. And finally, the Milosevic troops withdrew. And the refugees, which were scattered all over the camps, in several camps, and had lost, they didn't know where they are. Children, they separated from the mothers. Anyone was just where there was a place, and not according to a logic, started moving back. And you know what? The first village which actually returned was the village of Fatmir, the old man. Why? Because he had an historical memory. Because he was old. He knew everybody. He knew who was the wife, the daughter, the sister. They knew where they were. And he and his wife had gone in each of the camps and actually recognized them. So he proudly was the first one to lead his own village intact, returning back home. So the message I got, and I want to share, is the following. Fatmir taught me that a hug makes a big difference. It doesn't need to be physical. It can be also a word, a sign of hope. People need to feel it when they are in a siege, when they are abandoned, when people believe that they don't deserve hope. And second, it's important to give food, medicine, a blanket, but the worst thing that a person can actually lose is his dignity. And the best thing we can give is dignity. Thank you.
Can I have a hug?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Staffan de Mistura. A hug, my friends, a hug. Don't forget that, please. Our next speaker is Emilia Bjugren, Vice Mayor of the City of Stockholm. Currently, Emilia works on labor market and sports policy, where she focuses to try to influence, change the society she lives in through equality and inclusion. Her peace talk tonight will be on how her political involvement was shaped growing up in my neighboring suburb, Tensta, and how you can build a city and keep it together, and how you can use this hidden potential and capture it. So, welcome to this stage, Emilia. We're so happy to have you here.
Tack så jättemycket. Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, as Alexandra said, I grew up in Tensta, an area in the northwest of Stockholm. That is where I went to school, made friends, learned how to ride a bike, and played football. In recent decades, Tensta has become quite infamous. In the media, it's often portrayed as a segregated, poor, and dominated by criminal groups and religious fanatics. That is not my perception of Tensta, at least not my only perception of Tensta. The vast majority of the kids I grew up with live what you might call ordinary lives. Some of them live extraordinary lives. One of my former classmates has become a famous pop star. One is a surgeon, and one travels the world as an engineer. For a long time, I thought that Tensta is the place where I'm supposed to live. I was what you might call a local patriot.
and I refused to fall for the negative picture often cabled out. So I didn't leave until I did. And the reason was as simple as it is sad. I too got tired of not feeling safe when coming home at night. And to this day, I don't really know if that fear was well-founded or simply the result of having heard one too many negative stories. But what I do know is this: segregation hurts people. I've seen what happened to some of my childhood friends, and it's been painful to say the least. They've fallen victim to drug abuse, gone to prison. They've taken paths in life which has led to harm and destruction, both to themselves and to others. And even though they are the exception, even though most of my childhood friends do still live their ordinary lives, every child who grows up and becomes a robber or worse is one too many. And even as a child, I realized that some of my childhood friends wouldn't have the means to make the right choices in life. I think you can imagine what happens in an area where only half of the grown-ups have a job, where only 1 of 10 of the kids participate in sports association, where 1 in 5 doesn't have the grades to get into high school. I felt that the hardship they experienced early on in life would have dire consequences for some of them. And so I anxiously awaited the day that I would turn 13 and be able to become a member of the Swedish Social Democratic Youth League, so that I could join the movement for a more just and equal society. And 14 years later, I became the vice mayor of Stockholm, and in 2015, we established the Commission for a Socially Sustainable Stockholm. Because the situation was urgent. Segregation had increased immensely in the city over recent decades. And to get a clearer picture, the Commission's first task was to survey and map what the situation in the city really looked like. And in the Commission's first report, Inequality in Stockholm, we could all see clearly just how bad it is. Between 1991 and 2012, average income level in Stockholm almost doubled. In the inner city, it increased by 64%, but in the suburb of Skärholmen, only by 1%. This means that the average income in Skärholmen has actually decreased and that people have become poorer. To take Tensta as an example again, 1/3 of the families with children today live beneath the child poverty limit. The average income for families with children is 170,000 kronas below the city average. This inequality also creeps into the mouth of children. In Rinkeby, more than every 10th 3-year-old have caries. In the central part of Stockholm, this is true for less than 1%. With all this in mind, the Commission for Socially Sustainable Stockholm now works closely with researchers to develop concrete actions on how to decrease inequality and give every child that grows up in our city a fair chance in life. And it is a tough job, but it is not rocket science. It is about giving people the opportunity to get a job and earn a living. It's about giving every child a real chance to get through school with passing grades. And it's about making sure that people can access affordable housing. And there are also positive trends. Take Skärholmen again, where the income levels had only increased by 1%. Here, unemployment has vastly decreased over the last 3 years. Among young people, unemployment has gone down by almost half. And this positive trend can be seen in other segregated areas of Stockholm as well, even in Tensta. And I believe that this development can be traced back to the generally positive economic situation in Sweden, but also to hard work and outreach to those people that are far from the labor market. We have made especially hard efforts to reach more young people and capture their potential before they fall into hopelessness. But as I said, it is hard work, and we still have a long way to go. The bright point is that hardship can also bring people closer together. We see a fantastic and growing commitment among citizens in Tensta, as well as in Rinkeby and Husby and other areas in our city. And I have good faith that if all these good forces work together, we can create a Stockholm for everyone, so that I can once more be unambiguously proud to be a Tensta girl.
Thank you, Emilia. Please move back to Tensta. We miss you. All right, thank you for sharing your story. I would also like to share my story a little bit of growing up in Tensta, and also about the work that Interpeace does in Sweden. So, my name is Thomas Emanuel. I'm 29 years today, and I have parents from Eritrea. I live in Tensta, and it's also where I work. And a lot of people in Tensta actually see me as a football player. I've become active the last time, and ever since I didn't meet Obama yet, but I was on Swedish television once together with the Minister of Interior Anders Ygeman and Annie Lööf. And ever since that, a lot of people mistake me for a politician now, which is untrue. The truth is that I'm actually a football player. I love playing football, and I've always dreamt of becoming a professional football star. And my goal was to become like Zlatan. And I'm a striker as well, and I'm still active, but a little bit lower down in the divisions. But I remember when I was young, my ambition was, to become this football player. I practiced very hard, I was determined. And every birthday, when you blow your candles, you make a wish, And so I always wished for good health for my family and friends, peace of the world, and this goddamn contract. And every year became a failure. And when I was about 25-year-old, I was kind of lost in life, not knowing what I wanted to do or what I wanted to become. So I had a choice of either continuing chasing my dreams and finding a way of life, or get into this vicious circle of frustration and hopelessness and, potentially even criminality. I chose the first option, and I went to Ethiopia to study. I stayed there for 3 months, and it changed my life upside down, I can say. I had a lot of experience, a lot of good experience. And when I came back to Sweden, I wanted to support other young people who was kind of stuck in their life, because I could recognize, the trouble that they were having. A lot of people have dreams and ambition, and not always you get to the goal. And after my trip to Ethiopia, I was feeling kind of blessed and privileged anyways, to have a good life. We have a good system in Sweden, and we're pretty much peaceful country. But at the same time, I got convinced that, happiness doesn't come from a, problem-free life. It comes, it's like us. We live in Sweden, which is a very peaceful country, but not all of us is happy today, because we all have problems and obstacles in life, and we deal with them in different ways. And I think that happiness comes from overcoming your obstacles and your challenges. When you see your obstacles and you face them and you have the courage to overcome them, that's when you bring out the happiness in you. And you also get confidence to reach your next goals. And this is exactly what we're trying to do in our work with Interpeace. In Sweden, our work has focused on the topic of inclusion, and our vision is to help Swedish society to become more inclusive society. Because we believe that, as my experience shows, that people need to realize that, the power, they have the power inside to change. It's not a matter of waiting for the change to come from above or from someone else. You have to create it by yourself and take a decision. And today we're working with different actors in society to help and inspire them to be more engaged and to take action. Because it's simple. We believe that the society is better together. I only have 3 minutes, so I don't have the 8 minutes like the rest of the speakers. So I'm going to present the next speaker, who is a fantastic guy. I know he's a little shy, but I'm shy as well. But he's been doing speeches. He's won an award in a gala in Sweden. And his name is Jeffrey EJ. He's a Paralympic champion in shoot put. I'll just take it in Swedish, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's better in Swedish, I think. Jeffrey är en paralympisk mästare i kulstötning
Jeffrey's a
och han har genom
Paralympic
åren
champion in shot
och
put,
idrotten
and
blivit
during
en
the years and
förebild för
within sports has
integration genom sport.
become a role
Han
model
kommer tala
within
om
integration in
vikten
sports. He's going
av
to talk about the
inkludering i
importance about
idrottsvärlden
inclusivity in the
och hans
sports
egen
world.
resa mot en
His own
silver...
journey towards a silver medal at the Paralympic Games in London. Please join me on the stage, Jeffrey. Exactly. Wow. I don't know what to say. I'm so nervous, can't say. The whole day I don't even thought that I would have the nerve to go here, even. As I've said, my name is Jeffrey EJ. As Thomas said, I've been to 2 Paralympic Games. The journey there hasn't been very easy at all, but I'm really proud that I'm here in front of you today. And as I said, I grew up in Tensta. A lot of people talk about Tensta. Knows it's a bad place where everything is down the shitters, everything is really bad. But I don't view Tensta that way. Tensta to me is warmth, love, different cultures together that can coexist. Tensta really shows that everyone can live together without any... I mean, it's true we've got our problems in Tensta, but the advantages are way more important than the disadvantages. I think you should come there and have a look and see for yourselves and not just trust what media tells you. As I've said, I'm going to explain to you, because I've got a slight disability, and that's why I've been given the opportunity to take part in the Paralympics. The thing was, I'm going to explain a bit. I started practicing track and field, a shot putter. That's where I took my medal, for instance, in shot put. As I said, the journey has not been easy at all, because I started with shot put. I tried at first, give attempts, maybe when I was in third, fourth grade, because we had like competitions for the particular school that I was going to at Kristinebergs. It was youth games, they were called, and I got to try track and field for the first time. I tried to run 60 meters. I was jumping high jump and all sorts of things, and then I got to try shot put. When I was about 12 years, in 6th grade that is, I tried shot put and was really successful the first times I tried. I won those competitions almost every time. I got inspired, really. That was not where my thrust into sports started, but it was later. When I got to 9th grade, and after 9th grades and 10th grade that we have in this particular school that I go to, when I was going to apply for upper secondary school, because these competitions were arranged as national competitions at the Stockholm Stadium, the Olympic Arena from 1912. And when we were competing at Kristinebergs sports ground and then at Stockholm Stadium, they had talent scouts from an upper secondary school for sports in Boldness. They thought I was really skilled managing to win these competitions, and they wanted to have me there to study in their school and go to school there. I applied and was accepted in the year 2000. And this is a school which, if you live there during the weeks, simply, I was 15, 16 years old. This was not self-evident to me that I would leave my mother and start a new school 300 kilometers away in Boldness. But I was accepted there and I started studying. And that school was really good. The first few years were a bit tough. I missed my mother. There was a lot of calling home almost every day, and but then when I got to the 2nd grade and 3rd grade of upper secondary, it started becoming easier. I felt safe there. I found a good spot, where I felt safe. Around 2003, the trainer at these upper secondary schools for sports, he was also coach for the national team Paralympics for track and field. He was really interested to get me to go and compete at an international championship. This was 2002, or 2003. And in 2003, I also got to compete in my first championships. That was in Poland. I was so incredibly nervous ahead. When I managed that competition, I think I ended up in 5th or 6th place. Then I knew that there is Olympic Games, for instance, for people, those who do not have any disability. And I've always been interested in sports, and it's been close at hand. I always liked moving, and we played football when I was younger, and so it's always been close to me, sports. I knew that the Olympic Games was available, but I also knew there was Paralympics available. That's really cool. Maybe it could be part of Paralympics. That would be fantastic. So then I sort of really trained for that, and then it was time in the year 2004 in Athens, in Athens in Greece. And we were ready. Everything was on the roll. We were at a training camp there also in 2003, and we were checking out the conditions ahead of the competition. I was really hyped up. And then they discovered that in 2000, the Spanish basketball team that were playing Paralympics competition in basketball in Sydney in Australia, and there they were cheating. 9 of 12 players, I believe was, did not have any disability. And they found this out afterwards. And they just barred my whole class of participating in the Paralympics 2004. That was not the most fun news I've got. I was, how can I put it? I've been fighting for, and I'd not been going for so many years. I thought I was going to continue fighting, and then it was time. I was fighting, and at the same time they barred us. They created a competition for us called Global Games, which was in Boldness, and I was included there, and I took my first medal there in championships. That was cool. But it was not like Paralympics. I was a substitute competition, not Paralympics. It's really sad. But they were fighting to get us back. And it was finally time again in 2008. And then it was thought that we were going to join, but last minute, those who decide, no, you're not going to partake because we cannot decide whether this affects you sufficiently in your sports for having the right to participate in the Paralympic Games. We were barred twice. That was really sad. I was on the verge of dropping my career as a sportsman, but then I kept fighting, and then 2012 they managed to get us included. So I was allowed to go and participate and compete at the world's largest competition, and going into this arena in front of 80,000 people and do your thing. It was huge for me. Something I will never forget. And I feel it's given me so much to have a chance to exercise sports, and for me with a disability, inclusion has been like a fight for me since society. When you look at people who are a bit different, deviating in some way, don't fit the norm, there's so many of you who've been talked about and described that you get shoved to the side. You don't get your well-deserved spot. So inclusion has always been a struggle for me and for our entire group. And sports has helped me so much. And just so that I could get to my club in Huddinge, that meant so much. Because there, I've always felt like one of the team. They've never viewed me as disabled. They've seen me as a shot putter. They've viewed me now. Jeffrey won the gold medal in the World Championships again, and they've been so proud of me. And they've seen me as an asset for the club. And I advertise for our club, and as I said, I've got so much to thank sports for. It's really made me feel like part of everything. I start doubting this, that you have a disability. Really, when I hear you, you are so cool. That's also a thing that my disability is on the inside. There's lots of prejudice that people that have retarded mental disability looking in a certain way, but I try to show my success and my activities in sports that everyone's different and got different experiences, and everyone's unique. No one is exactly the same as anyone else. You can't judge a person for believing that they're in a certain way. You have to actually learn to accept that person. You can't do that through just, as I said, it's so interesting because this with plurality, It's like the tip of an iceberg. It's just this small part of the plurality that we see, which is visible to us all. Most of it's not visible. But before you take the stairs down from the stage, but didn't you bring a medal with you? Ah, you did. I forgot, sorry. Here it is. That's fantastic. That's cool. London 2011. Jeffrey, you're a hero. You are a hero. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
For everything, and good luck with the rest of your athletic adventure. So now, please join me in welcoming Sofia Breithol, Social Mission Manager at Ben & Jerry's. She will be here on stage talking about the importance of inclusion in business. Welcome.
So thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, all the heroes here tonight. Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, honored speakers here, ladies and gentlemen. It's been really powerful here to listen to how individuals really can inspire change. And that is inspirational. But for true and lasting social change, all parts of society must be involved. All parts of society must play a role. And we've heard about civil society and governments, but governments cannot do this alone. And businesses today have not only a responsibility, but a strong role to play. Now at Ben & Jerry's, we have been making ice cream since 1978. But since 1978, we have been committed to something else as well. We've been committed to something called linked prosperity. And for this, and for us, this means that as we as a business thrive, and as we as a business prosper, then we also need to see that our partners, our farmers, our customers, the people who work for us, and our communities must prosper together with us at the same time. It also means something else for us. It means that we have a voice that we are obligated to use and to stand for social justice today. Now, in Sweden, we use this voice to partner with Interpeace and to partner with Kompis Ungdom, because we find that when we are together and united, we reach a wider audience. We can then speak with a louder and a clearer and a more impactful voice, which really brings us social change. This winter, Kompis Ungdom and Interpeace and Ben & Jerry's got together and invited a great group of young people to come together from different backgrounds and to talk about what it means for them to have a better future, and what it means to them to actually work on small acts of inclusion every day to build a more inclusive society for tomorrow. These young people are here today as well, so I hope you get a chance to speak with them later. And we've made a little film that we'd like to share for you this evening. So here it is.
Det var jätteroligt och jag känner mig bra. Så när jag träffar mina kompisar där och vi sitter tillsammans och ja, vi gör också samtal, vi spelar kort.
Det var tuffa ämnen att prata om, men ja, svåra frågor.
jag har lärt dig till exempel hur man kan acceptera i samhället och vad är viktigt när man kan acceptera i samhället. Och jag har lärt dig språket från andra svenska personer och jag träffade nya personer.
De har varit roliga, lärorika och intressanta. Man får lära sig om andra människor och lite andra synvinklar på saker. En större förståelse för problemen det är med att komma hit och inte få ta möjligheter som den som redan bor här har. Och även hur det är att fly genom världen.
Folk som har en sämre attityd mot nyanlända, det är brist på kunskap. De skulle verkligen behöva det här. Om de hade varit med oss så tror jag de hade ändrat uppfattning.
Jag gick till kompisungdom därför att jag vill träffa kompisar, svenska kompisar. Jag vill veta språket och jag vill veta kultur.
För att annars så blir det vi mot dem. Det blir rasism. Det blir liksom ingen dynamik i samhället. Det blir alltid olika grupper och grupperingar. Och det har visat sig genom historien vara extremt negativt. Så därför är det viktigt.
Det är mycket viktigt att man kan inkludera i samhället. Därför att man kan inte känna sig ensamhet och man kan ha förtroende. Så det är viktigt att man kan inkludera i samhället.
Jag tycker att det ska finnas ett samarbete mellan idrottsföreningar och skolor.
Ge ett leende och säg hej.
Studiebesök med skolan och företag. Därför att vi träffas med nya människor.
Ändra tänkesätt om du har fördomar. Lita inte på fördomar.
Bidra till ett arbete för integration. Det kan antingen vara med din egen tid eller ekonomiskt, så att alla får ta del av någonting.
Satsa på lärare för att ge förebild och ge bättre kunskaper i den olika ämnen. En bra lärare kan ändra en elev livet.
Sverige. I'm now joined here by Mr. Tord and Mr. Scott, my buddies and my colleagues. Tord Magnusson is the chair of Interpeace Sweden, and Scott Weber, the Director General of Interpeace. And the people you saw in the film who share their acts of inclusion. Tord and Scott, I would like to ask you, what are you doing? What are you going to do as of right now to foster inclusion in your work and daily lives?
I would like to continue to fight fear of the unknown. Because what we don't know, we're very afraid. But go, open up, touch, hug each other.
Scott.
Thank you, Thomas.
The more I work on conflict zones around the world, the more I'm convinced, like that young man said, that education is the answer and that teachers need support. So my commitment is to work to support teachers in the promotion of inclusion in the classroom. But, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, we just heard a series of incredibly inspiring stories of individuals who are working in big and small ways to make a more inclusive Sweden and a more inclusive world. As an international peacebuilding organization working in 21 conflict zones and Sweden, there are two things that I want to share with you. The first is that behind most conflicts, at the origin of most conflicts that we deal with around the world, is some form of political, social, and economic exclusion, and a sense of injustice that is borne by that exclusion. And the second thing is that this is not an issue that's reserved for the Somalias and the Congos and the El Salvadors of this world. This is a universal problem. It's as relevant in Europe as it is in those countries. It's as relevant now in the United States, as we heard, as in those other countries. This is a universal challenge. We all have work to do to make this a more inclusive world. But as we also saw in the video and in the testimonies, exclusion is felt at the personal level. And I would argue that inclusion, to be successful, must also be felt at the personal level. And so I challenge all of you to reflect on what is the act of inclusion that you're going to make this a better world. As we heard from Heidi, who was so inspiring, empathy is a muscle. So let's all get started with our workout. The chair of Interpeace Sweden, and my good friend Tord Magnusson, is going to talk about the partners that have made all this possible. I want to take a word as the Director General of Interpeace to say a big word of thanks to the team that made this such a success tonight. There are 4 individuals I'd like to honor. The first is Sarah Noble, the head of the Peace Talks. Please give her a round of applause. Tord Magnusson, the chair of Interpeace Sweden, who was instrumental in making this possible. Amanda Mirvik and Janine Bressmeyer. Thank you so much. And let me also say a big word of thanks to our founding partners for the Peace Talks, who are not here today, except Janine, who represents the Geneva Peacebuilding Platform. The other institution is the UN office at Geneva, with whom we launched this whole affair back in 2013. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I will end this by thanking everyone who has been able to make this possible. The City of Stockholm and their staff. It's been great to work with you here. Ben & Jerry's, the Swedish Postcode Lottery Foundation, the Embassy of Switzerland, Nespresso, which are in the back, Geneva Peace Talk Platform, Darwin Digital. I also like to thank the musicians, Elin Rombo and Iveta Irka, who played the piano. And Elin, when you were singing the Puccini, it's a strong thing for me. I also want to thank you, the Lilla Akademin, who will end this performance for tonight. I also need to thank the moderators, Alexandra Pascalido, thank you very much, and and of course my friend Thomas here. Give him a big hand. And now I welcome Lilla Akademin on stage.